The wisdom of knowing you know nothing, why arrogance is the real ignorance. There's a kind of confidence that looks like intelligence from the outside. The kind that speaks loudly, posts constantly, and never hesitates to offer an answer. We see it every day in debates, in comment sections, in boardrooms, in politics. It's bold, it's certain, it feels smart. But what if that confidence is actually a symptom of ignorance? What if the people who seem the most sure of themselves are often the ones who understand the least? That's the dangerous illusion Socrates saw clearly over 2,000 years ago. And it's still destroying lives today quietly, invisibly, one overconfident ego at a time. The illusion is this, thinking that because you have an answer, you understand the truth. But answers are cheap. Wisdom is rare. And the most dangerous kind of fool is the one who doesn't know they're a fool. Socrates, the father of Western philosophy, said something that still cuts through the noise today: "I know that I know nothing." At first glance, it sounds like a humble quote. But it's actually a psychological and spiritual bomb. Because what he was pointing to wasn't just humility, it was a way of seeing the world that dismantles the illusion of knowledge. Think about it. How many things in your life do you assume you understand? Love, success, politics, justice, your own mind, your own trauma. But what if your understanding of those things isn't real understanding at all? What if it's just a collection of second-hand opinions, surface-level definitions, and unchecked assumptions? That's the illusion. You feel smart, but you're standing on air. You mistake memorization for wisdom and certainty for insight. And that illusion is seductive. It gives you a sense of control. It makes you feel safe, but it also makes you blind.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
Let me ask you something that might sting. When was the last time you genuinely changed your mind about something important without being forced to? Not because you lost an argument, not because someone shamed you, but because you listened, reflected, and realized you were wrong. Most people go years, decades without ever doing that. Why? Because the illusion of being right tastes better than the discomfort of being honest. The ego loves to be right, even if it's wrong. And that's where the danger lies. When you believe you already know, you stop looking. You stop learning. You stop questioning. And when you stop questioning, you stop growing. That's what Socrates feared most, not ignorance itself, but arrogant ignorance. We all fall into it. I've fallen into it. You've fallen into it. It feels good to be the one with the answer, the one who gets it, the one who can explain it to everyone else. But underneath that rush of superiority is a trap. Because the moment you believe you've arrived, you've already stopped. Your mind closes. Your worldview hardens, and you mistake that rigidity for clarity. But real wisdom is the opposite of that. It's fluid, curious, unstable. It's the willingness to say, "I don't know," not as a weakness, but as a doorway to deeper understanding. Socrates didn't claim to be wise because he had more information. He was wise because he never stopped questioning. And the more he questioned, the more he realized how little he actually knew. That's not a flaw. That's the beginning of freedom. The mirror of delusion, how false confidence destroys growth and blocks real intelligence. One of the most dangerous things about false confidence is that it doesn't feel like ignorance. It feels like clarity. It feels like strength. It feels like truth, but it's not. It's a mirror that reflects not the world, but your assumptions about the world. And over time, you start to fall in love with your own reflection. You stop seeing things as they are, and instead only see what confirms what you already believe. That's not intelligence. That's a closed loop, a self-reinforcing illusion. And here's the scary part. The smarter you think you are, the easier it is to fall for this. Because once you believe you understand, your brain starts building walls around that belief, walls that keep out anything that might challenge it. That's how people stay stuck. That's how entire lives get built on delusion. And the worst part, the people inside those illusions truly believe they're awake. But they're not. They're dreaming. And their dream is made of ego, not truth. Let's make this real. Think about someone you know who's always sure of everything. They have an opinion on every topic. They never hesitate. They always have a reason, an answer, a justification. But if you look closer, you'll notice something. They don't change. They don't grow. They don't evolve. Because they're not actually engaging with the world, they're just defending their image of it. That's not wisdom. That's ego armor. And it's fragile. Yeah. The moment reality pushes back, when a relationship ends or a belief collapses, they either double down harder or fall apart completely. Why? Because their identity was built on being right. And when you build your identity on being right, being wrong feels like death. That's why false confidence is so dangerous. It's not just intellectual. It's emotional. It becomes who you are. And challenging your ideas starts to feel like an attack on yourself. And yet, we reward this kind of arrogance constantly. In our culture, confidence is often mistaken for competence. The person who speaks the loudest is seen as the most knowledgeable. The person who never doubts is seen as the most trustworthy. But what if that entire system is upside down? What if the people who doubt themselves are actually the ones we should be listening to? What if the real thinkers are the ones who pause before answering, who ask questions instead of giving speeches, who say "I don't know"? Not because they're weak, but because they're honest. Socrates would have loved those people, because they carry the first and most important sign of wisdom, humility. And not the fake kind, the real kind. The kind that understands the complexity of the world. The kind that knows knowledge is layered, nuanced, and always incomplete. Let me flip the mirror onto you and onto myself. Ask yourself this: where in your life are you pretending to know more than you actually do? Where are you speaking with confidence about things you haven't deeply investigated? Where are you holding tightly to a belief not because it's true, but because it's comfortable? These are not easy questions, but they are essential. Because until you face them, you're not thinking, you're just performing. And the more you perform, the more disconnected you become from the truth. The illusion gets thicker. The mirror gets shinier. And you start to confuse your reflection with reality. But here's the exit. You don't need to know everything. But you just need to be curious again. You need to become a beginner. Because the beginner's mind, the one that's open, questioning, uncertain, that's where all real growth begins. That's where intelligence lives, not in certainty, but in the space between certainty and doubt. The power of not knowing, why uncertainty is the gateway to real wisdom. There's a moment, if you're lucky, when you hit a wall. Not a physical wall, but an intellectual and existential one. You realize that everything you thought you knew about the world, about yourself, about what matters was built on assumptions. You see the cracks in your beliefs. You feel the emptiness behind your confidence. And suddenly something terrifying and beautiful happens. You say the words "I don't know," and you mean them. Not as a placeholder, not as a performance of humility, but as an honest admission of your limits. And in that moment, everything changes. Because now, you've stepped out of the illusion. You're not pretending anymore. You're not grasping for certainty. You're awake, and that's where real wisdom begins, not in knowing, but in not knowing. In being open, in being teachable, in becoming a student of existence itself. This is what Socrates understood so deeply that the world had no choice but to remember him for thousands of years. He walked the streets of Athens not with answers, but with questions. He made the powerful uncomfortable precisely because he wasn't trying to be powerful. He was trying to be honest, and that honesty dismantled the illusion of superiority. That he didn't just say "I know that I know nothing" as a clever phrase, he lived it. He exposed the flawed logic of the so-called wise. He revealed how ignorance hides behind authority, behind status, behind loud voices and long speeches. And what did it cost him? Everything. He was sentenced to death for corrupting the youth and impiety. But in reality, he was punished for something far more dangerous, thinking freely, open for showing others that the emperor had no clothes, that those who claimed to know the most often understood the least. And this still applies today. In fact, it might be even more urgent now. We live in an era of instant opinion. Everyone has a platform. Everyone has a voice. Everyone feels entitled to be heard. But the question we rarely ask is, should we be speaking or listening? Should we be declaring or inquiring? Should we be showing off what we think we know or sitting in the discomfort of what we don't? The world doesn't need more noise, it needs more depth. It needs more people willing to slow down, to ask better questions, to sit quietly with uncertainty and let it teach them. Because from that silence, from that humility, comes something far more powerful than knowledge, wisdom. But wisdom isn't loud, it's not flashy. It doesn't need to dominate or impress. It speaks in quiet truths. It acts with clarity. It listens more than it talks. So how do we live this? How do we avoid the trap of the illusion that makes fools feel smart? The answer is deceptively simple, but life-changing when practiced. Start with this: question yourself more than you question others. Before you challenge someone else's belief, ask yourself why you believe what you believe. Is it because you've deeply thought it through, or because it confirms what you want to be true? Next, make peace with not knowing. Let it become your superpower. When someone asks you something you don't understand, say, "I don't know. Let's explore it together." That single sentence builds trust, invites dialogue, and opens the door to actual learning. Then, surround yourself with people who challenge you, not just people who agree with you. Because growth doesn't happen in echo chambers. It happens in friction, in discomfort, in the presence of people who see the world differently and force you to clarify what you really believe or let it go. And finally, here's the deepest truth of all. You don't need to know everything to live a meaningful life. You don't need to master every concept, win every debate, or impress anyone with your intellect. You just need to be real, to be honest, to stay curious. Because in the end, the wisest people aren't the ones who've collected the most answers, they're the ones who've asked the most honest questions. They're the ones who can look at the mystery of life and say, I don't understand it all, and that's okay. Because that mystery is alive, and it's in our humility that we finally meet it not as conquerors of knowledge, but as pilgrims on the path of truth. So the next time you feel certain, pause. The next time you feel like the smartest person in the room, listen instead of speak. And the next time someone challenges your beliefs, thank them. Because they might be handing you the key to a deeper truth than you've ever known. Socrates knew this. He lived it. And in doing so, he left us with a gift that could save us from our own arrogance, if only we're brave enough to receive it.